It's very nice to talk about energy communities and cooperatives. And I had no idea REScoop had have this division on the name. Hopefully, I won't offend too many people in your team. Hello, and welcome back to The Social Economist, perhaps Europe's most energetic social economy podcast. We're kicking off with our third and final mini-series of Season 3. We're going to be talking about energy, a topic of critical importance to Europe, for citizens, and for the social economy. Perhaps energy is a sector where the social economy actually has a competitive advantage, and business models that finally everyone, not just those already in the know, can get their heads around. In this season, we'll be talking with DG Enna from the European Commission, DG Energy, for those not in the know, and Impact Scale Up from The Hague, working on decommissioning and geothermal power, and finally with REScoop, the European Network for Energy Cooperatives and Communities. Welcome to this final episode of our final mini-series of Season 3. In this episode, I'm not going to tell you we've saved the best until last because I think our other guests will be offended, but we have a really fantastic interview to bring you. It's with Chris Vrettos from REScoop, or REScorp, depending on who you ask, the European Network for Energy Communities and Cooperatives. Energy cooperatives is a really exciting and interesting model of energy production and consumption, and really about this topic of energy sovereignty. It's very relevant. So it's been really interesting to hear a bit more about what are these communities, cooperatives, how do they work, what do they look like, how is Europe engaged with supporting them, and whether or not this is an area where the social economy perhaps excels and can actually showcase its leadership in other sectors as well. I hope you enjoy listening, and here it comes. No, but thanks for making time to speak this afternoon. I think the best place to start maybe is with introduction to yourself and also to REScorp. Who are you and what are you doing?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Toby, for having me. And I think speaking about the social economy, of which energy communities are a part of, I think is more important than ever in the current geopolitical and broadly political climate that I think we'll discuss more later. And you're already touching a sensitive chord. There's a big debate if it's called REScoop or REScoop. Half of my team calls it one. So it's it's we're already getting into like let's say sensitive topics here. No, but my name is Chris. I am a senior policy advisor at REScoop EU, which is the European Federation of Energy Communities, with over 2,500 members from across the European Union, as well as Ukraine, Turkey, Western Balkans. We represent more than 2 million citizens, and our main, let's say, focus area is how do we put the right policies in place to enable citizen participation in the energy transition. We do that through capacity building, really going to the communities, sharing with them ideas on communications, business plans, potential legal forms. We do that through advocacy, so really speaking to EU institutions and national governments to put the right laws and regulatory frameworks in place. And we do it through networking. So really, reaching out across the aisle, speaking, beyond our bubble to trade unions, businesses, bankers, kind of trying to create these progressive coalitions. And that's why I think it's so important that we're speaking, the two of us here today.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, obviously. Otherwise, I probably would have tried to find somebody else. But no, it's really nice to have the chance to speak and also to talk about energy communities, cooperatives. Yeah, cooperatives, I don't know. REScoop, that's a bit of a surprise to me. But yes, me, my English pronunciation of things. But maybe, I guess, another good place to start is actually what is an energy cooperative? Maybe let's start with that very basic question.
Yeah, so it boils down to the very simple idea that energy should be a fundamental good, universally accessible to all, and it shouldn't be a commodity. And it has a long history in Europe, dating back to the first community-owned grids in Germany at the start of the 20th century. And then, it kind of starts becoming more popular with the first community-owned wind turbines in Denmark in the 1970s. And it fully becomes, let's say, a mainstreamed into European legislation in 2019 with the Clean Energy for All Europeans package of directives, where basically you have the Commission calling on all member states to recognize within 2 years in their national legislation the two new legal entities renewable energy communities and citizen energy communities. This effectively means that member states have to allow citizens, municipalities, SMEs, and a bunch of other, let's say, actors, physical or legal, to get together and co-create local renewable energy projects. The most common example that I think comes to our mind is 100 citizens getting together and creating a local solar park, and then the energy that is produced is basically metered, or let's say removed from their electricity bills. But actually, energy communities can participate in the whole of the energy market. So we're looking at wind, we're looking at district heating, electric mobility. You have some communities, for example, in Barcelona or the Netherlands, that are doing electric car sharing. You have energy efficiency and housing renovations. Most of the energy communities in Europe are doing some sort of awareness raising around how can their members reduce energy consumption. But then you have some very professional ones, like in France, or there's Ecovision in Ireland. That's basically they're functioning as one-stop shops for their local community to help them navigate all stages of the renovation process. So yeah, you're looking at a really wide spectrum of activities that communities can do. In every member state, they can, in some member states, you have a distinct legal form, which is called an energy community. In others, you just use other existing legal forms, like it can be an SME, it can be a company, it can be like different things. It's usually not for profit. That's what the European directives say. And it's all about, promoting local development. And it's really interesting because, we see studies from France or Germany showing that actually for community energy projects generate 2 to 8 times more economic benefits for local communities compared to private renewable energy projects.
Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but it does seem like a big difference. There's a variety of activities that these communities can do, which is also interesting, actually, and it's much broader than just putting a few solar panels on some roofs. And is there a big difference in how these communities have been established or developed in different European countries?
Yeah, actually, REScoop has this, let's say, seminal tool called the transposition tracker, where we're analyzing and rating through a color-coded scheme to what extent member states have actually created, recognized energy communities, and then also created an enabling framework for them. And when we say enabling framework, we mean to provide a public awareness raising campaign so that citizens know that this option exists, to simplify procurement rules so that municipalities can work together with energy communities easier, like, for example, offering the rooftops so that the community can install a solar plant. We're talking about funding schemes, how, to what extent has a member state created some sort of financing scheme to help communities get off the ground. And in the Netherlands, where I know, Toby, you're based, there's a very strong funding scheme, which is, let's say, a collaboration between the government and the National Federation of Energy Communities, which is very, very interesting. So we're rating then through the transposition tracker how different member states are doing. Some are still severely behind. They haven't even officially recognized energy communities or are just now going to, like Malta or Sweden or Cyprus. And then you have others that, like have a very long history of cooperative energy, and it has become quite mainstream. So you're looking at, for example, Belgium, and specifically the Walloon region, where it has really went quite far, actually. There, every wind project, regardless if it's made through an energy community, has to offer up to 24% of shares to the local community, to locals, basically, to citizens. So yeah, it varies between member states, but we're getting there. Wow. And there's within the next couple of months, the Commission will come forward with a so-called Citizen Energy Package, which will be a set of non-legislative documents, so guidance documents towards member states on how they can further support energy communities, but also other forms of citizen energy, such as like putting a solar panel on your rooftop as an individual, accessing flexibility, smart devices, energy efficiency upgrades, and so on.
Sometimes it's interesting to hear quite how much is going on in Wallonia because for most people it's difficult to understand anything about Belgium, and then when you actually start talking about the little bits of Belgium, it gets even more difficult for anybody to really understand who you mean. But yeah, Wallonia has some really interesting examples in the social economy, and I didn't know about this energy community dimension or local energy participation in these projects. That's really cool.
No, I mean, talking about Wallonia, I learned yesterday that they have a minister for the social economy, so it's quite structurally and culturally embedded into their, let's say, governance. Yeah, interestingly, the regional government there provided this year a 300,000 euro structural grant to the Regional Federation of Energy Communities, REScoop Wallonie. And this is a really good practice example because this is exactly what we're calling for the Commission to do, to recognize national or regional federations of energy communities, because these exist in every member state at this point. And by giving them, structural funding so that they can do their communication, their advocacy work, they can hire people, they can professionalize, you can really make kind of, crowd in a lot of private capital down the line by assisting federations, because the federations then go to the ground, they provide technical assistance to projects, they help even build financing schemes or do advocacy. So they're really kind of accelerators for the community energy movement.
Now I'm curious. I mean, we're talking about European, but also local, and that's also quite a nice dimension. You mentioned a few policies like the new ones, citizen and energy advisory hubs, the ones which came in 2019. Are there, enough policies? Is there enough support coming from the European level, or is there some, yeah, more support which you would think would be transformational for this, movement sector?
Yeah. No, in general, I think what we agree more or less within REScoop is that there is good support from the European Commission. Now the ball is in the member states' court to put in place, the enabling frameworks that, along the lines of the criteria that the Commission kind of dictates in the Renewable Energy Directive. For example, we're seeing that the Commission keeps encouraging member states to use EU funds to support energy communities, but many of them are not doing that. In fact, now in 2025, it's the so-called midterm review of cohesion funding, and a lot of countries are actually redirecting funds from renewable energy initiatives into defense spending. So, we're really, and this is what we're pinning our hopes on for the citizen energy package, to focus on concrete implementation by the member states. And when we talk about implementation, we're talking about technical assistance, we're talking about funding. And again, I'm going to repeat this, we're talking about acknowledging at the government level the national federations of energy communities and working with them as equal partners to co-develop the enabling framework at the national level, because they know what's happening on the ground, so they are the best actors to speak with to get the ball rolling.
I don't want to go too. Questions are coming to my mind now while we're talking. I don't want to go too into detail of different European funding programs. I think it might not be very interesting. We might have to cut it out for anybody who's listening. You mentioned then the midterm review of the cohesion funds. Under the recovery and resilience facilities of a post-COVID funding which member states could access, there was not so much emphasis on green energy. I understand there was sort of more ability to put in funding towards infrastructure for fossil fuels and less sustainable energy. Is that something which was in your experience or the experience of REScoop co-op damaging, or was that something which you didn't really get impacted by? And now I'm also thinking about going forwards, the social climate fund, so this money that is going to be available to member states, is putting money into energy cooperatives, energy communities, something which you're hoping to see in these social climate plans that member states are putting together?
You're giving me the perfect pass to mention that actually on top of the transposition tracker, we also have a financing tracker that looks and rates to what extent member states are using EU funds, including the recovery fund, and now most recently the social climate fund, to support energy communities. With the recovery fund, it's a mixed bag. As you say, with the, let's say, Repower EU chapter that was after the Russian invasion, you had that loophole where you could extraordinarily fund fossil fuels, and we saw that some countries like Slovakia, like Croatia, they chose to do that, which is obviously highly regrettable, because we know by now how unstable fossil fuels are. We know that high electricity prices are, let's say, pegged on the prices of gas. We know that the more gas you have in your electricity mix, the higher the electricity bills are. Every study, time and time again, confirms that. Nobody's denying that anymore. So it's really, I think, in Europe's, it's not even about a social or like climate objectives. It's in our geostrategic interest to accelerate the phase out of fossil fuels and accelerate at the same time the growth of homegrown renewables, especially those owned by local communities. So yes, you have these bad examples in the recovery fund, but you have good examples like in Spain, where a lot of the recovery funds actually went to communities as grants, to like develop a solar project, for example. But also, interestingly, they gave money to organizations to set up the so-called transformation offices, that are basically local one-stop shops that can be run by an energy community, a local organization, which in turn, through this peer-to-peer approach, helps members of the local community understand, all the different aspects of the transition. Like, how do I buy a heat pump? How do I renovate my house? How do I put a solar panel on my rooftop? So that was quite innovative from Spain's perspective. So more information can be found on our financing tracker on how different member states use the recovery fund. And now we're more closely looking at the underdevelopment social climate plans, as you pointed out. And that's going to be a big battlefield. In fact, we're coordinating over 40 organizations, EU and national ones. We have 21 criteria for the plans. We're quite happy because we're making some good headway in influencing the planning process early on.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. I mean, I think the social climate plant and the social climate fund is quite interesting, and it's got a lot of potential. But I think because of the way it's being, like the recovery funds done at the national level, that makes it more difficult for EU level organizations to really work out how to engage and then who to engage with as well. So I think I'm pleased to hear somebody is working on this and making positive impact as well.
No, because we really want member states to acknowledge energy communities as vehicles of a just transition, but also as vehicles for affordable and secure energy prices. Like, we're really telling them, look, fund community energy projects that include vulnerable households, but also vulnerable micro enterprises, like the local bakery in the street, like next door, the local, I don't know, like taxi service or whatever it might be. To make them join a community so that they can, through local energy sharing, through a PPA, through renovations, they can actually reduce their energy prices considerably. And we're happy actually that energy communities are recognized as a tool to lower energy prices in the action plan for affordable energy that the Commission published in early 25. We'll keep pushing for that for sure.
That also brings me on nicely to my next question, which is what more could be done to actually help more energy communities or cooperatives be established, and also then help those which are already existing to actually expand, grow, meet new members and things like that.
Support the federations. Wherever we see, I know I've said it a couple of times already, but where we see this actually happening, like in the Netherlands, to an extent in France, where there is some official recognition of the role of the federation, then we see an exponential growth of the communities on the ground, because there is this accelerating, let's say, multiplier factor. Another thing is setting a political target. Again, in 2019, the Netherlands set a non-binding but still strategically important target that by 2030, 50% of projects should be in community, let's say, or under citizen control, and that kind of provided a blueprint for the actors on the ground to go to the municipalities, to go to the government, to go to industry players and ask them to offer shares to create community energy projects. So even if it was non-binding, it still gave them kind of this like political imperative, the strategic imperative. So we're asking now, for example, for the citizen energy package that will provide this guidance to member states, to include guidance on, okay, look, Slovakia, Greece, Romania, Spain, you need to set a target by 2030, by 2040 of how much community-owned renewable energy you want.
It's really nice because I've been having lots of conversations with people recently, and they're not usually this positive about what's going on in terms of the opportunity and the trend. And I think this is really nice to see that within energy there is opportunity for the social economy, and I think that it's one of the topics which maybe mainstream or not mainstream, but more general actors in the social economy need to engage with a bit more. When you're talking about energy communities, energy cooperatives, how much do you engage with other social economy actors and social enterprises? Or is it more you're engaging with the energy and communities sector rather than social economy as such?
Not enough. It's definitely within our, let's say, strategic plans for the next 5 years to reach out to other sectors of the, let's say, cooperative world. We recently started a strategic partnership with FEBEA, which is the Federation of Ethical and Alternative Banks in Europe. And we're looking to see how we can reach out more to rural audiences. So let's say agricultural cooperatives, and there, there's so much fertile ground for collaborations. You're looking at, for example, rural energy communities that include, doing solar and agricultural, what we call agrivoltaics, where you kind of have crop production, and then on the top you have solar panels. And I think that's especially important to reach out to the rural areas where we see there is kind of increasing and rightful discontent towards the political mainstream. There's an increased tendency to the far right. There's an increased, let's say, contrarianism. Is that even a word? There's an increased resistance towards renewables or kind of the Green Deal. Whereas we think if we actually go to the ground, we speak to those people, we engage in this peer-to-peer approach of, okay, let's develop renewable energy projects together. I feel like that's going to get them, that's going to get the buy-in, that's going to get them to actually agree with the transition.
Oh, there you go. That's a nice note to kind of conclude on, I guess. Being positive and looking at how we can actually get this to go further. And I really think there's a lot opportunity for the social economy. And finally, there's a clear and I don't want to say easy, but quite a clear and relatable example of what a social economy organization, social economy enterprise looks like and how it can actually benefit people rather than just the idea that it's, a nice thing to do because you can. This is actually concretely a better option in many ways.
Yeah, but at the same time, we shouldn't rest on our laurels. We have the next EU budget proposal that the Commission published in July for the budget that's going to run from 2028 to 2034, and there you have a lot of a significant increase in defense and arms spending, a lot of focus on what the so-called industrial competitiveness, whatever that means, and we're seeing an increasing sidelining of the social economy. There's no dedicated funds for energy communities. There's no more dedicated just transition fund. So, we really, and within REScoop as well, we want to, within 2026, mobilize at the member state level as well, build those progressive alliances with other actors of the social economy as well, with banks, with progressive businesses, to demand, let's say, a fair and progressive implementation and architecture for the EU budget.
This narrative around competitiveness and resilience and strategic autonomy was the previous buzzword, but now it's competitiveness. But yeah, do you think that presents an opportunity for energy cooperatives? I mean, you just mentioned in the MFF, multi-annual financial framework draft, there's not the funding which you maybe would like to see, which I think a lot of people would like to see. Do you find that a bit surprising or contradictory that there's this big opportunity around, addressing energy prices, addressing reliance foreign sources of energy, but then there's no investment in something which is proven to actually work quite well?
Yeah, because I think Europe is going down the path of militarist Keynesianism. It's hoping to prop up its economy by propping up its defense and arms industry, which is an absolute, short-sighted, let's say, bullet to, like shooting yourself on the foot, basically. So there is still support for renewable energy, and I think it has become kind of like much more clear after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, the bullying that the United States is exerting on Europe to buy more fossil fuels, the constant instability that we're seeing in the Middle East, especially with the genocide in Gaza. I think it is becoming more and more clear that renewables are the solution, and much more so community renewables that people can tangibly see the benefits of. Uh, and when I say people, I also mean small businesses. And it is important to emphasize that competitiveness is not just for the large corporations; it's also for the mom and pop, local store, the shoe store, the bakery, the whatever, the little mini market that's in the corner. If they can access cheap and stable energy, that can be game changing for their competitiveness. And SMEs and social economy organizations are the backbone of the European economy. So when we talk about competitiveness, we should never forget about those.
It's a really nice example of where the social economy should be kind of focusing and talking and like saying something, because there's a lot of people who are very interested to talk about what the social economy is, but fail to offer any kind of practical or tangible example. And this is such a good example of not only what it can be, but also how it can be a competitive success.
Yeah.
So it was very nice to talk about it.
No, and it is it's a healthy sector and it's a growing sector, and I think that's why we kind of need to also now kind of use, let's say, the momentum around the energy communities to reach out to the other sectors as well, like the cooperative agriculture sector, for example, to not just kind of put all our eggs on one basket and just focus on energy communities, but see how do we build these like intersectional alliances for sure.
Yeah, especially on rural, because there's this big emphasis at the moment about rural exclusion and all the rest of it. So I think, how do you include the rural communities in the green and digital transition is one of the things people really want to talk about. So yeah, nice to have an answer for a change. Before we finish, obviously, I should ask you about podcasts. I don't know if you're a podcast listener, and if you are, maybe you have a recommendation of one which you'd like to share.
I'm being a Gen Z, let's say, in that community. I am like most of my peers suffer from a small degree of ADHD, so I find it hard to focus on podcasts. But I do read a lot of books, and I would recommend How to Blow Up a Pipeline, which is a really, really greatly written, incisive kind of research, let's say, on civil disobedience movements and how that can kind of be replicated and brought into the climate space. How can we use the tactics of past civil society movements, such as for Black liberation in the States or in South Africa, the suffragette movement, and how can we bring that power into the climate space to demand for, let's say, radical action? It's quite inspiring, honestly.
No, I mean, it sounds like we should be making books rather than podcasts. I think not everybody, but I think at least a third of the people I've spoken to so far have recommended something to read instead of something to listen to. So I should take the hint, I guess, and stop trying to make more podcasts.
Let's write a book about the social economy. I think that's the to do after today's discussion.
Yeah, we can launch it in 2030 as the follow-up to the Social Economy Action Plan. It's good idea. And of course, no episode of a podcast, let alone the last episode, would be complete without a recommendation. I'm going to recommend Dish. It's a podcast about food, but also with celebrities, where they have an interview over their favourite food, which is actually very nice. So feel free to check it out for some light-hearted entertainment. Thanks so much to Chris for really ending this series of the podcast on a high with so much energy. It was really great to have that chance to speak, to learn a bit more about how energy communities and cooperatives work. And I think this is really something where the social economy has a lot to offer. And actually, we talk about sovereignty, defense, resilience, strategic autonomy, whatever you want to call it, local energy production and consumption, affordable rate, which isn't dependent on other imports of energy goods. It's a very interesting prospect. I think one which the social economy should not be shy about talking about and demonstrating to other energy sectors and people beyond the social economy. So I'm really happy we managed to bring this mini-series, but also this season, to a close on this very positive and optimistic note, we'll be back. The Social Economist will return for season 4. Until then, thanks very much to the European Commission, as always, for making this podcast, this whole series, and this many years of work possible. Thanks to Yankee Shivara, who's also been with us from the beginning. Until next time, goodbye.